All right, so we made it. I'm here. I survived the Rings of Power season 2. Whew. That was an awful season of television. Unbelievably awful. Today, though, is not my full season review. Today is just going to be reviewing the eighth episode of this season, which is the final episode, and just give you a breakdown of my thoughts. I put notes here right in front of me. Just as I watched this episode, I was making notes, and boy, it's not the worst episode, but it's as bad as it usually gets, and plenty of things here to go through. And I'm just going to go through them in chronological order and just kind of give you my thoughts as I go along. So starting off, the episode starts in Khazad-dûm again. So the last episode ended off with the battle in Eregion still raging. Now this one cuts all the way to Khazad-dûm with the dwarves, and basically young Durin is there trying to save his father, who's entranced by the ring, and it's leading him to do crazy things, and there's war breaking out in Khazad-dûm amongst the dwarves. He confronts his father. At that moment is also when the Balrog decides to finally emerge. They've been hinting at this now for 2 seasons, the Balrog finally coming up from underneath, and here he is, he arrives. And I will say this, the scene is ridiculous, it's stupid, and it makes no sense. But the Balrog looks great. I'll give them credit where it's due. The CGI of the Balrog looks great. Looks exactly like the one from the Lord of the Rings films. And I think they've improved on the CGI again, and it looks great. The actual sequence though was just nonsensical in the sense that King Durin III makes a sacrificial attack at the Balrog once he's removed the ring. So he's now come to his senses, and he's basically sacrificing himself. But that's it. So that's all we got to see. And so all this build up to the Balrog, and all we see is them clash swords, and it's meant to reference obviously the death of King Durin. And that cut to next scene. That's all we got. It's talking literally a 1.5-2 minute sequence there with the Balrog, and it means nothing. Had no other bearing on the rest of this episode, and so don't even know if they're going to pick it up again, because they mention later on that he's now dead. So they're in mourning. And we see the dwarves again later on. We see young Durin later on again, but there's no reference to the Balrog. So where did the Balrog go? He just came up for a quick fight and then he disappeared again? The hell was that? It was stupid. It was really terrible. Anyways, moving on. We then cut over to Rune with the Dark Wizard now, and which is to do with all of the Halfwoods and the Stranger and all of that. Dark Wizard talks to the Stranger, meets him eventually. And this is where this is the Stranger's big moment to prove his powers. He comes and he saves the Halfwoods in the episode from the Dark Wizard, who was trying to rain the rocks down upon them for no real reasons. But he saves them, uses his powers. I'm jumping back and forth a bit here in the timeline of the episode. I'm just gathering my thoughts as I go. But basically, the conclusion of this story arc in this season is the Stranger saves the Halfwoods, the Stores and the others, whatever. And they basically bid farewell and depart. And the stupidest moment of the whole episode, I could not believe this. As one of the Stores is saying goodbye to the Stranger, she says to him, "Goodbye, Grand Elf," as if she thinks he's just a tall elf. And he goes, "Grand Elf?" And as soon as he said that, I knew, okay, I know what they're doing here. This is ridiculously stupid, and I can't believe they're doing it like this. It made me just think straight away, this is the whole thing that they were going for, why they hid his name this whole time. We knew it was Gandalf from the get-go, from season 1, but they wanted to do this mystery box stupidity storytelling. Builds it up and up and up, make it question who it is. Of course, we all knew it was him. And this is it. This is how he gets his name, by a stool calling him a Grand Elf. And then later on, at the very end of the episode, when he returns to Tom Bombadil, he gets there and he walks in and he says, "I go by the name Gandalf." So he got the name for Gandalf by a store calling him a Grand Elf. Stupidity in the extreme. And right after that, he reveals it, gives the name to Tom Bombadil, and Bombadil basically says to him, "Okay, now sit and let's sing." So he just sits. They sit on the fireplace together and they just start singing the song of Tom Bombadil, and then roll credits. It was just like stupidity to the max. I could not believe what I was watching. Grand Elf equals Gandalf now. This is This is peak storytelling and writing, apparently. People who love the Rings of Power. There you go. Grand Elf equals Gandalf. I hope you love that one. Moving on from that. So we do even get a bit of, before I get to the main storyline, which is to do with Eregion, we do get some stuff that happens in Númenor, particularly with Elendil, and that is where he is now, exiled, and he's escaping, he's making his way out. And there is a scene there where he goes to find Muriel to take him with her, and she says, "You go on without me," basically sacrificing herself, blah, blah, blah. And then they've got to have their moment where they steal something directly from, not Tolkien's Lord of the Rings, but Peter Jackson's Lord of the Rings. They have this scene where she shows him Narsil, the sword that eventually becomes Anduril in the Lord of the Rings, that Aragorn gets when he becomes king. He want that moment where she's there talking, she presents it to him, and he has to pull it out and observe it like that. It was the exact same frame for frame shot as the scene with Aragorn and Elrond from Return of the King. It was just, it's not a bad scene, but it's just so copied, and it just perfectly illustrates how they want to do the exact same things from the movies, but they don't want to earn them in any way. There is no weight to that scene or moment whatsoever. There's no build up to it. There's no stakes, but they still want to have that moment and make it look the same visually. But substantially, nothing. There's no substance to that scene whatsoever. So it's just nonsense. But yeah, that's basically just it. He escapes. He's moving on. We do even get a bit of a Isildur too in this episode, and Theo and them and the men of Pelagia who are moving on now, and you have the son of Ar-Pharazôn who's now in Middle Earth. He's there. He meets Isildur. They have a bit of a scuffle. This and that. Whatever. I couldn't care much less about what's going on there. In particular, there's a moment when Isildur and Theo embrace, and it's meant to be a sort of a profound moment. Like it's meant to have meant something to us, to them. They barely spent any time together in this whole show. Barely anything. And we're meant to feel like it's some deep moving moment when they have to part ways. And then on top of that, the woman who Isildur is falling in love with, whatever her name is, okay, they've had a bit more time together, but they have another moment too where they kiss, and it's meant to be this big profound moment. Again, no real build up, they planted the slight seeds of love and affection between one another, but it's not earned. These moments are so not earned. They want to have them, but they don't want to earn them. And this is the crux of the show in general. My biggest problem with that so many turns is that they want to have these big moments. They want to have these payoffs, but the setups are rubbish. And that's why nothing means anything. There's no feeling behind anything because the setup is just not there. And so they're cutting corners at every turn. And the result is just very poor outcomes of what we get. Moving on, looking at my notes here. So now we'll go to the mainline story of Eregion. This is where I couldn't quite... There was a moment here where it shocked me where, okay, we knew Celebrimbor was going to meet his end. It was pretty clear. He's going to meet his end in this episode. We know in canon he meets his end, and pretty gruesomely. But the end of the last episode kind of hinted, okay, we're still going to get something with him, like before Sauron does what he does. The first thing we see of him is he's already got 5 arrows planted in him, and Sauron is firing the 6th one or whatever into him at that very moment. That's the first shot we see of him, just there against the rubble and pierced by all these arrows and dying, and Sauron's having his last words with him, whatever. And Celebrimbor's telling him, you'll never amount to anything, they'll never worship you or see you as a king, but you are just the Lord of the Rings. So they had to get that one-liner in there, and that's all that moment was for, really, to just have him finally say the words Lord of the Rings to Sauron. That's it. That was the whole purpose of that scene. On top of that, what's happening now in Eregion, the battle kind of skipped a major time jump, if you ask me, because at the end of the last episode, the battle was still somewhat going on the field in front of Eregion, in front of the wall, and Elrond's still awaiting for the dwarves' arrival. But then here, the first thing we see of them is him, Elrond and Gil-galad are now captive by the orcs and being ushered through the city. And we can see the orcs running riot and taking part in the sack of Eregion. And so it just skipped a major thing there. Him, Elrond, Gil-galad, and Arondir are now held captive. And that's it. And then, from there, the orcs show up, the dwarves show up and begin a fight with them. Like, just out of nowhere, somehow they got into the castle without being seen. And then they just start a fight with them. Craziness. Apart from that, another thing going on in Eregion is you have Adar, who's there now, and he's showing that the ring has actually healed his face, and he gives it back to Galadriel, and his face starts to go bad again. He's basically saying that if we can destroy Sauron, he's going to retreat to Mordor and take his orcs with him, and he'll never cause any trouble again. In that moment, another place, Sauron has manipulated the orcs now to go, and they kill Adar quite viciously, I might add. And it was kind of a silly scene because, okay, they're having this moment where it's a backstab, and it has a bit of shock appeal to it, but then they keep stabbing him for like a minute, and like a group of orcs. So you're talking like maybe over 100 stab wounds, and he's still alive on the ground. Yes, he's dying, he's bleeding out, but he's still alive, breathing, and even putting his hand up. Like, what? He should be well and truly dead, and they just wanted to drag that out for some reason. And it reminded me, like, comedically, of the death of Ben Stiller's character in the beginning scene of Tropic Thunder, where he's acting out, pretending to die after being shot a million times, and Robert Downey Jr. is holding him in his arms. It felt like that kind of level of a joke, almost, the amount of stab wounds he had, yet he was still going. It's kind of ridiculous. I don't know why they went for that, but they did it, and it was a choice. Another ridiculous thing that happens, a bit later on in that, Sauron and Galadriel engage in a sword fight, and she's pretty badly wounded. She has the ring, and at one point he basically forces her, or she jumps off a cliff, a massive cliff, and she survives. They find her, Gil-galad and Elrond find her later on the ground, and she's alive, and they start healing her wounds, or try to heal her wounds. It's like, what? Like, how does she survive that? It's no, like, she had the ring. If they're just implying the ring can do that, it's pretty absurd, because they've never kind of shown that kind of power for the ring before. But that broke her fall. I don't understand it. I don't get it. But they did it, and it was mind-boggling to me how they were able to do that, or why they did that. But yeah, look, apart from that, just want to talk about what else was going on. In the final scene, there's a scene with Poppy, one of the Harfoots. She starts giving a speech to Nori and to the stranger, and this is another Easter egg, whatever moment you want to call it, or a callback to something else. And they're trying to have their Sam moment from the Two Towers when he's giving his speech as the montage plays over the Battle of Helm's Deep and whatnot. She's doing the same thing, talking about this and that, hard times and whatever, showing the battles going on. And it just has no impact because she hasn't been through anything at that moment whatsoever. The stupid thing with the Dark Wizard was nothing. She was in hiding, and she comes out and she tries to give this profound speech, and it just has no impact. Again, they're trying to cut a corner. They want their scene of a hobbit giving a speech that's speaking to things that are greater than her or them, and just has no impact. They're trying to copy the Lord of the Rings films, not even Tolkien lore, just Lord of the Rings films, and they can't do it because they don't know how to set it up. She has no weight behind her character. There's nothing, no gravitas to her in her delivery. It's just so bland and lame, and it just sums it up. The whole show for you is just cutting corner after corner after corner to just try and get their moment in that replicates what happened in the Lord of the Rings films, but they just do it to such a lower level, and it's just so sad to see, but it's not surprising whatsoever at this point. So yeah, this show is terrible. I'd say this season was just as bad as the first. Maybe there was a bit more action in it to kind of hold your attention this time compared to the last, but writing-wise, story-wise, it's still as messy as ever. I don't know. We kind of know where they're going to go from here. Obviously, we know the fall of Númenor is going to come at some point next season or the season after. We know, okay, they're hinting at the last alliance, essentially building up another alliance to fight against Sauron. Another thing I actually want to mention to do with that is that when the dwarves arrive to help the elves, there's a scene with the Uruks, or the orcs, come to Sauron telling him, we're outnumbered, we're losing, we're outnumbered, what do we do? Sauron kills him for no reason. But then after that, it shows the elves fleeing Eregion in defeat. It was like, well, hold on, were they winning the battle? What happened to the dwarves? What happened to everyone? Did they just show up to help them and then left and then abandoned it? Like, it doesn't make sense. Either they came and won the fight, or what did they come for? So I don't understand that. What was the logistics behind that? Did they win that battle but they were abandoning Eregion? I don't understand. It's just another thought that came to my mind in wrapping this up, but just an icing on the cake in terms of how the crappiness of the show, if you will. So yeah, that's all I want to talk about, guys. The show, the episode is as incoherent as ever. There is nothing to the show whatsoever. It's an embarrassment. It's embarrassing to the name of Lord of the Rings. Tolkien is spinning in his grave. Peter Jackson is probably rolling his eyes and just like, oh my God, I cannot believe what they're doing. They're tarnishing the name of what he did so much to build up in cinema, in film, and they're just absolutely destroying it. But look, not a surprise. The show continues to fail. Be very interested to see what the rating is going to be for this, or how people try to spin this one as a good episode or whatever, but it is not. It is awful. And yeah, that's my thoughts, guys. Appreciate you for watching. I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comment section below. Did you enjoy it? Did you hate it as much as I did? Whatever it is, I want to hear them all. Thanks for watching, and we'll talk to you next time. Bye.